Daf Chof Zayin Amud Beis. We'll begin Chof Zayin Amud Aleph right at the bottom. So we had the Tana D'Mei Rishmal that said that the Torah talks about beged. In several places it mentions beged without specifying what type of garment, and we found that it says in a certain place it says that the beged is semer upishtim, that it defines it as wool and linen. So previously we were learning the Tana D'Mei Rishmal, who said, well, we find that the Torah specifies semer upishtim, that indicates that all begodim are semer upishtim, have to be made out of wool and linen. It's talking about the din of tumah. That just like we find that by negoim, by tzaras, by leprosy, the Torah says semer upishtim, so it's only susceptible to tumah, a beged of semer upishtim. That's where it's susceptible to tumah. So too, by other sources of tumah, for instance, by tumah sheretz, and if it comes into contact with a beged, it's metame, it makes it tome. The beged that we're talking about is a beged of semer upishtim. And then we had some difficulties because it seemed to be not like another Tana D'Mei Rishmal that seemed to learn differently. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Omar, he says, no, the interpretation of the first Tana D'Mei Rishmal that we had on Daf Chavav in the base is not referring to Tumah at all. It's not referring to Tumah, and therefore there is no steer between that and the Tana D'Mei Rishmal that we have on Daf Chav Zayin and Aleph. Because he says what it's referring to in the first Tana D'Mei Rishmal is Rav Nachman Yitzchak Omar, Av Kol, when it says in the Lashon is that we find Hol v'nemer begadim Torah stam, upart l'cha kosabechem semer pishtim, ma lahalan semer pishtim, Av Kol semer pishtim. He says that the reference over there of Nachman Yitzchak said the reference is not legabe tuma, Av Kol la'asuyet tzitzis, is coming to teach you the beged that the Torah is machayev for tzitzis, that what type of a beged, what type of a garment has a requirement for tzitzis. Do you have to place tzitzis on it? It's a beged of tzemer, of pishtim, wool or linen. Correct the Gemara, tzitzis. So what do you mean tzitzis? Behedjik siv, the Torah says befer, it says leisil bashatnes, samro pishtim. So the Torah, the smicha is right next to the parasha of tzitzis. It says the Torah brings the isser of shatnes, samro pishtim. You can't wear a beged that has a combination of samro pishtim. Uksiv gedilam tasalo. And it says that right next to that, it says you have a chiyuv of tzitzis. So you have a smichas of parashas, and that itself should be enough to teach you that the requirement for tzitzis is dafka beged of tzemer pishtim. So why do you have to learn it out? Why does he say you're learning out from the goyim? You have it tzitzis. It says in the parsha of tzitzis itself. It says it's written right next to shatnez, which is tzemer pishtim. It says loisil b'shatnez, and it says gedilim tasas. So Sal Gemara says no. Sal kedaita chamina. I might have thought to interpret it not in this manner. I might have thought to interpret it not to say that the beged that's chayiv in tzitzis is semer pishtim. I might think to interpret it the way Rav is interpreting, and that's why the Tana D'Mei Rishmal is saying don't interpret it that way. Interpret it to mean that the beged that's chayiv in tzitzis is dafka semer pishtim. What does Rav say? The Rav Rami. Rav asks what seems to be a contradiction. Ksiv hakanaf min kon. It says that you put on the corner of your garment tzitzis. Now the Torah already says al kanfei bigdeim, that you put tzitzis on the corner of your garment. So then why does it have to say v'noso ala tzitzis konav psil tchelet, that tzitzis on your corner? We already know that tzitzis has to be on the corner. So therefore, what that implies, Dr. Rava, is that the tzitzis has to be made from the same material as the garment, as the corner of the garment. The reason why the Torah reiterates the konof, the corner, that seems to teach you that the tzitzis have to be made out of the same material as the corner. But as we said before, we have the smichas of the parashas that it says loisil bashat semer pishtim. It says gedilim tasal, which seems to indicate that the tzitzis, the gedilim, the tzitzis, are made out of semer pishtim, meaning that no matter what the garment is made out of, you can use the tzitzis of semer pishtim. So how do we resolve this? If the tzitzis are made out of wool and linen, it doesn't matter what the garment is made out of, it patters regardless. But if the tzitzis are made out of other materials, for instance silk, if the garment is made out of silk, tzitzis of silk will patter it. But you can't use tzitzis of silk for a garment, let's say, of wool and linen. So that's how Rava resolves it. And therefore he uses the smichas of the parashas of shatnez to tzitzis not to teach us, not to tell me that only a garment made out of wool and linen is chai b'tzitzis. No, Rava says other garments are also chai b'tzitzis, not only wool and linen. So what does it say? The smicha is v'sil bashat serum pishn gedilim ta'asalach. It's telling you that if the gedilim, if the tzitzis are made out of wool and linen, it patters any type of garment. But other types of garments made out of other materials are also chayv in tzitzis. If you have a garment made out of, let's say, silk, then semru pishtim will patter. And certainly a garment made out of wool and linen, then tzitzis out of wool and will patter it. But if you have a beged made out of wool or linen, tzitzis of silk will not patter it. It will only pater a garment made out of silk. So, you might have thought that the smichas of the parashas of Tzemra Pishtim with tzitzis is teaching you like Rava. Kamash Malan. That's why the Tana Bereshma is saying no. And we learned this out of the Goyim that the only chiyuv of a garment to have put on tzitzis is only if the beged is made out of Tzemra Pishtim. Only a beged of Tzemra Pishtim is chai b'tzitzis. According to this Tana Bishol, now the Tana Bishol, the second Tana Bishol, says that even other types of garments there is a tuma. There's tumas sheretz by other types of garments. He learns it from a riboy of oy beged. Why don't we say by tzitzis that we should include other types of garments also, because we also have a riboy of asher techasebo? The more answers hahu la'asuya eksusuma. This riboy, yes, we do have a riboy by tzitzis. That's correct. But the riboy we have by tzitzis is not to include other types of begodim. The riboy is to include other type of people. That even a summa, even a blind person, he also has a chiyuv of tzitzis. It's a l'su iksu summa, the garment of a summa. Ahu l'su iksu summa da'asa. The sanya risa moisa. Now why would I think differently? Because the pasuk it says by tzitzis that you see it. So it says Rismo is a prat l'ksus laila. That excludes eksus laila. In eksus laila there is no chiyuv of tzitzis. A garment that's used for the nighttime, there's no chiyuv of tzitzis. So that's what we learn out from Asher Re'isa, that you see it at nighttime, and when it's dark you don't see. So it excludes eksus laila. What is eksus laila? There's a different opinion amongst the Rishonim. Does it mean any garment that's worn at night? Or does it mean a garment that's specifically used for the nighttime, pajamas? Or does it mean either or? It means both of those cases. That's machlekes in the Rishonim. Al kol panim, we see that where ismoiso excludes eksus laila. Atayim erprat l'ksus laila. So, for the Gemara, maybe you're telling me that it excludes eksus laila. Perhaps we should be saying, oy enu ela prat l'ksus suma. Maybe it should exclude the garment of a summa, of a person who can't see. No, we have a riboy, like we just mentioned, whatever you cover yourself, it broadens it. It's anything that is being covered is using for a covering. So from that riboy, we include eksusuma. So what do I do with the the exclusion of Re'isa Prat l'ksus laila? That excludes eksus laila. It excludes the garment of the night. Well, we have a riboy and we have a miut. we have a riba shetachas. It's broad. It includes other things. Now we have a miyut that says a reason. You have to see it. So why should I choose between the two and include ksus suma and exclude ksus laila? Why should I say that? Why don't I say it just for care? Do they say the opposite? More answers mar ben ksus suma. I include a ksus of a suma sheyesh nebariye tzalacher, because even though the suma can't see it, but other people could. So it is included in the re'isim moisoi. It has an inclusion in the re'isim moisoi because it is seen not by the suma, but it can be seen by others. But I exclude ksus laila that in the darkness nobody can see it. So therefore, the re'isim moisoi, it is the ksus suma fits in more into the re'isim moisoi rather than ksus laila. Well, still, how do I know to include a ksus suma? Why don't I just say that it doesn't include a suma? Because suma also doesn't fit into the re'isim moisoi perfectly. And maybe I should say that rather what it means to say is to include other begodim, other types of garments, aside from semropishtim. But besides semropishtim, maybe it includes other garments, other materials, but only if it's used in the daytime, and not ksusuma. So why do I include ksusuma and not include other begodim? Perhaps I should include other begodim and exclude ksusuma. More answers mistabri koibet semru pishtim, marbet semru pishtim. Now, we have this smichas of the parashas that says semru pishtim dilim tasel. And therefore, the Torah is marba for tzitzis, a beged made out of semru pishtim. So it's more mistabri to say that when we have asher techasa, but we have a riboy, we're including something, we're dealing with semru pishtim, we're dealing with a beged of semru pishtim, include other things of semru pishtim, meaning include a beged of a suma by semru pishtim. But why should I say that when we're discussing a beged of semru pishtim, the Torah says, we're talking about a beged of semru pishtim. Why should we say that the Torah is now including other types of begodim? So it's more mistaber to say that. So we have the smichas of parashas that says semru pishtim gedilim tasalach. The Tana Beirishmol says the beged that's chayv and tzitzis, it's dafka beged of semru pishtim. It says re'isim moisoi, therefore that excludes ksus laila, and the garment that's used at night. It says asher techasaba, which is a riboy where marbe ksus sumam. Amar Abaye, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar v'Simchas, Amar Dorech. Abaye said that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and Simchas are the same sheet. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, which we learned earlier on, this is how we began the sugya. He said, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Kol hayotzim min ha'etz ein bo mishum sholosh al sholosh. Anything that comes from a plant doesn't have the din of tuma, of sholosh al sholosh. U'mesach boy, and can use it for schach, chutz min pishner, except for flax. So the criteria by schach for sukkah is it has to be gedulei karka, it has to grow from the ground, and it cannot be makabel tumah. It can't be susceptible to tumah. So Shimon Elazar says a yetzman something comes from a plant, so it has both criteria. It fulfills both of them. It's gedulei karka, and it's not makabel tumah. It's not a beged. It's not processed. It's a raw material. It's not makabel tumah. You could use it for schach, except pishtan, except flax. Because flax is makabel tuma by the goyim, it cannot be used for schach. So Abai says that sheet of sumchus is of the same opinion. So Amar Abai, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar v'Simchas, Amar Domerech, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Amar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, that's what we just said. Sumchus, where do we see that Sumchus says the sign Sumchus Aimer, Sicha Betevi Psul, Mipnei Shematam ben Goyim. He says, if you masacha with spun threads of flax, it's possible because it's mitama bin agoyim. Because it's mitama bin agoyim. So therefore you see that even though it's not a beged, as Rav Shimon ben Elazar says, that kol hayotzim min ha'etz is misachem by chutz mi pishtan. He didn't say chutz mi beged pishtan. He didn't say even if it's a beged, a garment is makabel tumah, certainly. But he said chutz mi pishtan, which means even the threads. Even the threads of Pishtan are Makabal Tuma. You can't use it for Schach. Simcha says the same thing. Sicha B'Tevi, spun threads, that also is Makabal Tuma. It's Makabal Tumas Negoim. Therefore, you cannot use it for Schach. Kiman, who is this following? Ki Haitana, it follows the following opinion. This Nash see the Erev Metam Negoim Miyad Div Ramer. Ramer says if you have spun threads of wool, the shli or erev is just spun threads, whether it's the shli or the erev, the warp of the woof, it's metam b'negoim, miyad. Even though it hasn't been whitened, it hasn't been bleached, it's metam miyad. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, ashli mishayishla ve'erev miyad. He said by the wool in his davka that the shli mishayishla, when you take it out of the pot, they used to bleach it, whiten it in the pot, it's only at that later stage. The erev miyad, he says, when you spin the walls for the Erev, the Tiferes Yisrael speaks out that the Erev is less visible than the Shli, so the Shli has to be only considered nigmar, only considered finished the processing once it's bleached, so therefore it needs that further stage, but Erev miyad. Unim shel pishtan, now here's the point we're coming to, that unim shel pishtan, the bundles of flax, mishayislavnu, when it's bleached. When it's bleached, then you have to, then already it's mekabel miyad. Now, as Rashi points out, that the bundles, and doesn't mean to exclude that threads and bundles, really, they're both mekabel tuma, and from Pishtan, they're both mekabel tuma. The threads, that we say that the threads are mekabel tuma, even if it's not bleached, telling you that the threads that or the thread sicha b'tevi is psula b'nei shematam negoim. As soon as it's spun into threads, it's mekabel tuma. Negoim Simcha says that means to say even if it's not whitened. Now, it doesn't mean to say, the Simchas didn't mean to say that it's only if it's spun. It means to say even the bundles are also mekabel tuma, but the bundles are whitened when it's whitened. And so it follows this time over here. Rav Yehuda says, "Unim shel pishtan the machine is lavnu." He says, "Unim shel pishtan machine is lavnu." They're mekabel tuma, and therefore we see that this shita of Simchas, that even the bundles of pishtan are mekabel tuma, the spun threads of the pishtan are mekabel tuma, even though it's not a beged and it cannot be used for schach.